Hey listeners, welcome to English Made Simple. Sometimes it feels like our minds are running a marathon we just never signed up for.
Yeah, it's an incredibly common feeling today.
Yeah.
Actually, we carry around this like low-level exhaustion, not because we've been running physically, but because our brains simply refuse to sit still.
Yeah, that mental marathon is, well, it's really our core focus for today. We are exploring this beautiful, motivational story about a young man named Marco.
Oh, it's a great story.
It really is. And we're treating his story as a sort of dual journey for you. So you're going to pick up some very natural, nuanced English vocabulary to describe your emotions and, your mind.
Exactly.
And at the same time, we're exploring the actual mechanics of finding inner peace, like how it works, why we lose it, and a practical secret to getting it back. So let's jump straight into Marco's world.
So Marco is 24 years old, and he's living in a small village surrounded by mountains.
Sounds idyllic.
Right. But despite the peaceful setting, he's the exact opposite of peaceful. The story uses a really fantastic English word to describe his baseline state. It says Marco was deeply restless.
Restless. I actually want to pause on that word because it's such a staple in conversational English.
Yeah, it really is.
We can break it into two parts, right? Rest, meaning to pause or relax, and the suffix less, meaning without. So he is entirely without rest.
Exactly, yeah. But in everyday English, we might also say his thoughts were racing or that he was on edge.
On edge, that's a great one.
Yeah, on edge is a perfect idiom here. It paints a picture of someone standing right at the boundary of a cliff.
Oh, right, because you can't relax.
Exactly, unable to relax because one wrong move made you fall. That is exactly how Marco felt internally. I mean, his mind was just crowded with thoughts coming and going all day long.
Just constantly moving.
Yeah. He was trapped in this very specific cycle, constantly ruminating, which, by the way, means thinking deeply and somewhat negatively about his past,
No.
and harboring just this intense anxiety about his future.
Wow. The emotional weight of carrying yesterday's sadness and tomorrow's fear at the exact same time, that's just huge.
It really takes a toll.
And the story uses this really striking metaphor. It says his mind was like a storm.
Such a good visual.
Right. You can visualize the dark clouds, the unpredictable lightning, just the endless spinning. But looking at the physical toll this takes on a person is fascinating to me.
Oh, absolutely.
The text mentions that this internal weather system makes him physically tired, like he's unable to sleep, unable to smile. And I've always wondered about the biological mechanism here.
How do you mean?
Well, if you were just sitting in a chair, right, just thinking about a mistake you made last week, why does your body feel like it just ran 10 miles?
Oh, that's such a good question. It comes down to how evolution actually wired our nervous systems. Your brain is brilliant, obviously, but it actually has a really hard time distinguishing between a physical threat in the room and an imagined threat in your memory.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
It can't tell the difference.
Not really, no. So when Marco worries about the future, his brain sounds an alarm. It signals the adrenal glands to release stress hormones.
Like cortisol and adrenaline.
Precisely.
Huh?
So the body physically prepares to either fight a predator or run away from one.
Oh, wow. So it's
You want-
preparing for a bear that doesn't even exist.
That's exactly it. The blood pumps to the limbs, the heart rate climbs, muscles tighten up, but the threat is just a thought.
Right.
So Marco never actually uses that physical energy to run or fight. He just sits there completely tense, burning fuel while remaining totally stationary.
Which is exhausting.
Right. And that is the biological definition of being uneasy. Un meaning not, and easy meaning comfortable or relaxed.
Uneasy. Got it.
Yeah, that chronic physical tension just drains the battery completely, which is why he feels exhausted despite doing literally nothing physical.
That really changes how we should look at stress. It's not just a mood, it's a biological drain.
Exactly.
So to intercept that, I imagine you'd have to first notice the physical cues, like realizing your jaw is clenched or, your shoulders are tight before you can even attempt to turn off the mental storm.
That's the first step, yes.
Yeah.
But Marco hasn't learned this yet.
Right.
He is just completely drained. And that sheer exhaustion forces a breaking point. He basically decides he has to seek a cure.
So what does he do?
Well, word reaches him about a wise older man living in a faraway village up in the hills.
Okay, the classic wise man on the mountain.
Sort of. But the background of this man is rather unique. He isn't like a traditional monk. He is actually a former city psychologist.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. He spent decades helping people navigate their mental struggles in a super busy urban environment. But he eventually just left that life behind for a secluded, natural setting.
So Marco embarks on this grueling, tiring journey to reach this village. And when he finally gets there, he finds the old man sitting on the porch of a little house covered in greenery.
Just totally serene.
Yeah, the man has his eyes closed, radiating stillness. And Marco approaches him softly and voices his desperation. He says, "I cannot stop thinking. I want peace in my heart."
It's a really stark contrast, isn't it?
It is. Marco is carrying a tornado inside his head, standing in front of a man who looks like a calm lake. But I actually have to challenge the premise of this setting for a second.
Oh, what stands out to you?
Well, the wise man is a former city psychologist who fled to the hills.
Right.
I feel like a lot of people might listen to this and think, well, of course he's peaceful. He doesn't have a commute. He doesn't have a boss. He doesn't have a smartphone pinging him all day.
That is a very fair point.
It almost implies that escapism is the only way to find tranquility. I mean, do we all need to abandon society and move to the woods to fix our restless minds?
It's a very natural conclusion to draw. I mean, we all think that. But it's actually a trap.
It's a trap.
Yeah. We culturally associate peace with a destination. We think, oh, if I just book a beach vacation, I'll be relaxed.
Oh, I've definitely done that.
Right. But what usually happens, you get to the beach, and your brain immediately starts stressing about the emails you're missing or, the flight home.
Yeah, you're physically on a beach, but mentally you're still in the office.
Exactly. You brought the storm with you. The old man's relocation to the hills was just a choice for his lifestyle, but the actual lesson he imparts to Marco proves that peace is not geographic at all.
Because, yeah, if peace were just about being in a quiet village, Marco would have felt peaceful the second he arrived.
Exactly. But instead, he's still miserable.
Right. So the old man doesn't just point to the trees and say, hey, look at the scenery, isn't it relaxing?
No, not at all. He takes a much more active and honestly surprising approach.
What does he do?
He opens his eyes, smiles, and says, "You are looking for peace. Come with me. I will give you a small task."
So he moves right past psychoanalysis and just gives him a practical challenge.
Exactly.
The old man leads Marco to the yard, picks up a glass, and fills it with water. But he doesn't just fill it normally.
No, he fills it completely to the brim.
Right. The surface tension of the water is practically bubbling over the edge. Like one tiny shake, one uneven footstep, and it will spill.
By the way, we can use the phrase fill to the brim here, which is an excellent English idiom for our listeners.
Oh, definitely.
The brim is the very top edge of a container. So when something is filled to the brim, it is at absolute maximum capacity.
So he hands this impossibly full glass to Marco, and the instructions are simple but brutal.
Yeah, he says, walk from here to the edge of the village and come back. But you must not spill even one drop of water.
Which sounds hard enough on its own, but we need to paint a picture of this village road for everyone because it is not a quiet Zen garden path.
No, it is chaotic.
It's bustling, right?
Yeah, very. It is a bustling, narrow road. There are people walking and running past him. Shopkeepers are shouting out to customers. Dogs are barking wildly.
So it's an overwhelming sensory environment full of movement and loud noises.
Exactly. It's incredibly distracting.
Before we see how Marco handles that, I just want to say real quick, if you've been enjoying listening to this, consider subscribing.
Yes, absolutely. We appreciate everyone who takes the time to dive deep with us.
Returning to Marco, he is navigating this total chaos. He doesn't look at the shouting shopkeepers or the barking dogs. His eyes are just locked onto the rim of the glass.
He's taking each step with excruciating care.
Yeah, the villagers actually stop to watch him. They don't interfere, sensing he's, in the middle of a lesson, but they watch this young man intensely balancing a simple glass of water through this riot of noise.
The mechanics of what the old man is doing here are fascinating from a psychological perspective.
Let me try to break this down, actually, because my first thought is why intentionally stress him out more? It's like telling someone who is already anxious to go balance a delicate house of cards in the middle of a crowded, loud party. It feels totally counterintuitive.
It does seem that way.
But I suspect this has to do with cognitive load. Like, if I think about a computer, it only has so much RAM, so much working memory.
Yes, exactly.
If you open a massive program, the background apps have to close or the whole system crashes. So, is the old man forcing Marco's brain to essentially close the background apps of his past and future?
Oh, that is a perfect analogy. You've hit the nail on the head.
Really?
Yeah. Cognitive load refers to the total amount of mental effort being used in your working memory.
Okay.
Before holding the glass, Marco's working memory was completely hijacked by regret and anxiety.
Just 100% full of the storm.
Exactly. By handing him a glass filled to the brim, The old man introduces a task that requires 100% of Marco's cognitive capacity.
Because if he allocates even 2% of his brain power to worrying about tomorrow, his hand twitches and the water spills.
Exactly. He literally cannot afford the luxury of rumination.
Wow.
The brain employs something called sensory gating. To protect his ability to balance the water, Marco's brain actively filters out the barking dogs and the shouting merchants.
So he literally doesn't process them.
Right. They become background noise that doesn't even register in his conscious mind. The acute, immediate physical demand acts as an anchor. It forcibly yanks his awareness out of the imaginary storm and drops it firmly into the physical reality of his hands and his feet.
He is essentially tricking his own nervous system into resetting.
Yes.
The sheer difficulty of the task overrides the mental loop. It's brilliant. So, Marco makes it to the edge of the village. He turns around, walks all the way back, and stands before the old man, completely victorious.
He must have been so relieved.
Oh, totally. He says, I did it. I didn't spill even one drop.
But then the old man nods, and he springs the trap.
Here it comes.
He asks, "That is good.
Yeah.
But tell me, did you see the children playing on the side of the road? Did you hear the dogs barking?"
Marco is caught off guard. He answers honestly, No, I didn't see or hear anything. I was only focusing on the glass.
And this is the turning point of the narrative.
Yeah.
The old man smiles and delivers the core lesson.
Which is?
He points out that peace was present, but it wasn't because the village was quiet. He tells Marco, when your mind stays in the present moment, there is no space for fear, no confusion, and no extra thoughts.
No space. I love that.
Yeah, he says, you were only thinking about the water. At that time, your mind became completely quiet. You were not sad about the past. You were not afraid of the future.
The phrase present moment is the cornerstone of mindfulness, both as an English vocabulary term and as a psychological concept, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The present moment is just the immediate now. It's the physical reality happening right in front of your eyes, entirely outside of your thoughts.
Yes. And the linguistic phrasing the old man uses is very deliberate. He mentioned that there was no space for extra thoughts. Confusion, which means a lack of clarity or a state of bewilderment, simply couldn't exist because the mind was fully occupied. Marco experienced a form of tunnel vision, but in a positive, therapeutic way.
It redefines what peace actually looks like. I mean, we usually think of peace as an empty room, a void of stressors.
Like the silent retreat in the mountains?
Exactly. But Marco's experience shows that peace is actually a state of absolute focus.
Yeah.
The world around him was noisy, chaotic, and demanding. The dogs didn't stop barking just because he was learning a lesson.
No, they kept barking.
So the peace wasn't the absence of external noise, it was the presence of internal focus.
And Marco absorbs this completely. The story notes that he bows his head, finally grasping that his location was never the problem.
Wow.
He realizes, if I want to calm my mind, I must keep my mind in this moment. That is when real peace comes.
He stops looking for an external shield against the world and realizes the tool was in his own attention the whole time.
Precisely.
Which brings us to you, the listener. We've explored the vocabulary words like restless, uneasy, the present moment, filled to the brim. Now we need to translate this into your reality.
Right, because we can't just carry water everywhere.
Exactly. Most of us aren't going to walk through our offices or our homes carrying a glass of water filled to the brim just to calm down.
No, probably not a great idea in an office setting.
So we need to identify practical ways to shift that cognitive load in a modern setting. The question is, how do you forcibly ground your mind when the storm hits?
It's all about finding that anchor.
So what does a modern glass of water task look like? I mean, if I'm sitting at my desk, overwhelmed by a project, and my heart rate is spiking because I'm worried about a deadline next week, what can I do right then to shift into the present moment?
Well, grounding techniques are the modern equivalent of the water glass. You need a physical action that requires enough sensory attention to interrupt the anxiety loop.
Okay, like what?
A really common method is the 5-4-3-2-1 technique.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yeah, it's where you force your brain to identify 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste.
So it forcibly reallocates your brain's RAM back to the physical room.
Exactly. It uses your senses to hijack that cognitive load back to the present.
I've also noticed that engaging in somewhat tedious physical tasks works wonders.
Oh, for sure.
For instance, chopping vegetables for dinner.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
Right, because if you aren't paying close attention to the knife, you might cut yourself. That tiny element of risk or required precision It anchors you. Or
Yes.
even just washing dishes, not just scrubbing mindlessly, but actively paying attention to the exact temperature of the water on your hands, the texture of the soap. It demands your sensory focus.
And that is the essence of mindfulness right there. It isn't about emptying your mind, it is about filling your mind with the immediate, tangible present so that the abstract fears of the future are pushed out. You find a task that demands your presence.
So I'd ask the listener directly, think about your own life using the English words we've discussed today. When do you feel most restless?
When do you feel on edge?
And crucially, what is your personal glass of water? What is a simple physical activity you can lean on to block out the noise and quiet your racing thoughts?
Establishing those anchors is a vital life skill.
It really is.
And, as the story of Marco comes to a close, we get this incredibly rich, descriptive imagery that mirrors his internal shift.
I love the ending of this story.
It's beautiful. The sun begins to set, the last light touches the ground, and birds are shown flying back to their nests.
The day is winding down, and Marco is walking the long road back to his home village.
But he's different now.
Right. The story notes that he is permanently changed. He is no longer the uneasy, exhausted young man.
And he still has to face his life. He still has memories, and he still has a future to plan for.
Sure.
But he possesses the secret to calming his mind when the storm tries to gather again.
The visual of the sun setting is a classic literary device, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The setting sun represents the end of his turbulent chapter. The heat of the day dissipates, leaving a cool, quiet evening.
But I am particularly struck by the imagery of the birds at the very end of the text.
The birds flying to their nests.
Yeah, it says the birds were flying back to their nests. And to me, it feels like more than just a nice detail to set the scene. It feels like the ultimate metaphor for everything we've talked about today.
I see the connection you're making there. The mind and the bird.
Exactly. Just think about a bird's daily routine.
Okay.
It leaves the safety of the nest at dawn. It spends hours navigating unpredictable winds, searching for food, dodging predators, exploring the vast open sky.
It's exhausting, necessary work.
Right. But as the sun goes down, the bird doesn't just hover in the clouds forever. Instinctually, it knows it must return to the boundaries of that small, quiet nest to survive and rest.
And our minds operate in a very similar fashion.
They really do.
Thoughts naturally take flight. They soar backward into our history to analyze past conversations, and they fly forward to scout the horizon for upcoming dangers or opportunities.
Which is totally normal.
Yeah, that is the function of a healthy brain.
But the dysfunction happens when we refuse to let the bird land.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
When we stay suspended in those memories or those anxieties, we become restless. We drain our physical batteries fighting a mental storm.
So true.
Perhaps the entire practice of mindfulness, the secret Marco learned with the glass of water, is just the act of returning to the nest.
The present moment is the nest.
Yes.
It is safe, it is small, and it is contained. When the mental exhaustion creeps in, you don't have to fight the sky. You just have to call your attention back home.
Call your tired thoughts back home. That's a powerful thought to carry with you.
It really is.
Well, we really hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Marco's journey and that you can use some of these natural English expressions like being restless, filled to the brim, and living in the present moment in your own life. Don't forget to like this video and drop a comment sharing your thoughts.